Sinclair Broadcast Group, connecting people with content everywhere.
Ahead on America This Week, as more states certify election results, the Trump campaign continues its legal battles.
They should take over these investigations, and they should take over this process because it's been irretrievably corrupted.
I'm talking one-on-one with the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, White House Deputy Communications Director and Deputy Press Secretary Brian Morgenstern is also here.
Whatever the Attorney General may have been referring to would be any specific criminal investigations that may or may not come across his desk, but not relating to the president's civil litigation.
And what would our foreign relations look like under a President Biden?
And so to throw Iran into that mix and embolden Iran, what does that do for us? Well, it makes a nuclear arms race in the Middle East.
Former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland weighs in. Dan Littman with Politico returns to talk balls and strikes. That and so much more right now on America This Week. Well, it's officially December. Hanukkah starts next week. Christmas, a little more than 20 days away, and 2021 is approaching. The end of 2020 has never been so close and yet so far. You know, it's no secret the U.S. media leans left. Not just leans left, the U.S. media are so left they practically fall over on their sides. A 2017 Harvard study concluded the media delivered 80% negative stories about Trump in his first 100 days in office. Comparatively, 100 days into Obama's first term, the media was far more favorable with only a 41% negative, 59% positive comparison when it came to the Democrat president. The media has always had a contentious relationship with the current president, President Trump. He called them out all the time at rallies.
We are in a rigged system, and a big part of the rigging are these dishonest people in the media. Big part.
In the briefing room.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.
I
think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people.
But you know what? That was part of the game. They asked tough questions. Trump shot back with snarky answers, but at least he did. He called on unfriendly media sources all the time. Who can forget those ridiculous questions CNN's Jim Acosta would lob at the president?
That's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
that you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming
investigation
down?
because it's a hoax.
Are you-
That's enough. Put down the mic.
But that's what the U.S. media is there for, asking tough questions, holding truth to power. It was so important the founders added the media to our constitutionally protected rights. We're entitled to freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and a free press. A press corps free to ask the tough questions, ensuring that the American people get to know who our elected officials really are, ensuring we don't end up with a dictator or someone who's self-dealing rather than leading the country. Now, I can't emphasize enough how concerned I am about the press corps and their new love affair with President and VP-elect Biden and Harris. I know it's just a few weeks in, but these same people were really tough on President-elect Donald Trump 4 years ago. Now, they've become somewhat soft, weak, mushy in their questioning of the incoming president.
You just spoke of some of the dangers of the president's continued stonewalling of this transition, but it doesn't appear that the president is going to come around anytime soon and admit defeat. So what are you going to do? What options do you have to try and ensure that you are ready to go on day one?
Not very hard-hitting. Or how about this one?
If the FDA gives emergency authorization to the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine in the coming weeks, will you get vaccinated?
Really, media? Those are your tough, constitutionally protected questions. I mean, what would we do without the hard-hitting coverage of Joe Biden's kitten? You folks are giving the U.S. softball team a run for their money. I mean, where the questions about Biden's proposed, then retracted, then reproposed national mask mandate, where were those? Or why didn't anyone ask Biden or Harris to condemn Antifa? Or how about someone asking Biden to explain how his tax plan won't increase taxes on anyone making $400,000 per year, because we all know that's going to be impossible. I'd like to get them on tape now before they do stuff later and claim they never said this or that. But that's the whole point of the media. Ask the tough questions, the questions that make the politicians uncomfortable, make them squirm a little bit, and get the answers on tape, and then use those comments when they lie. Because guess what, folks? They all lie. It's just good to have it on tape to remind them. Obama famously said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor under the reform proposals that we put forward. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep it.
Well, that wasn't so true after all. We now know that. Guess what? It happens on the other side, too.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Well, that was a lie, too. You see, folks, politicians lie all the time. It's the media's job to remind them what they promised. So I'm asking that gritty, tough crew of Acosta at CNN, tough guy, get it, John Carl at ABC, good, Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, John Swan at Axios, and others. You folks were tough on Trump. You did your jobs. Now it's time to be just as tough with Biden and Harris. I know Biden and Harris just got elected, and it's the honeymoon phase, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. Millions of Americans have died. Millions of Americans have lost their jobs. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died. And we have a couple of politicians who've proven to lie on more than a few occasions. So guess what, media? I think it's safe to say the honeymoon is officially over. For once, please prove me wrong. Ask the tough questions we want answered. Not left or right, just straight down the middle fastballs. Because your softball questions for these two are honestly getting a little embarrassing. Attorney General Bill Barr says the Justice Department has found no evidence of a voter or election fraud, and the campaign is fighting back. Let's bring in our good friend, Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who's heading the fight, the legal fight on behalf of President Trump. Mr. Mayor, were you as shocked, I guess, as anyone hearing the Bill Barr statement that came out this week? What were your thoughts when you heard it? What do you think was behind it?
I guess I was shocked because he hasn't investigated anything. So I don't know how he would have found evidence of fraud. At least he hasn't investigated the 300 or 400 witnesses who have direct evidence of fraud, and they've subjected them to affidavits under oath. I have a group of them. The campaign has a group of them. And then private lawyers all over America. I mean, there are about 10 private lawsuits with their own group of affiants, you would call them, people who have sworn under oath that votes were stolen in their presence. Hundreds of votes were marked down for Biden all in a row. Machines were fed Biden ballots 10 times in a row. In the case of Pennsylvania, it's outrageous. 882,770 votes were cast secretly without any Republican inspection. You can be sure they were almost all for Joe Biden. It's the only way he could have caught up. And now we have this truck coming from Bethpage delivering ballots, another 300,000. Honestly, you want to know why? They didn't have enough ballots to steal. What happened in Pennsylvania is he got too far out ahead. They never expected to be 800,000 votes ahead. They didn't have enough ballots to make up for it. So they had to go get more ballots.
So Mr. Mayor, why would Bill Barr make a statement? A lot of people, look, no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, there are those who say, okay, it's time, it's time to call Joe Biden the president-elect. And there are those who say, if there's even one instance of fraud, we need to continue to investigate to make sure there's not systemic fraud. But the question is, Mr. Mayor, the Department of Justice, you'd want, as an American citizen, not as a Republican or Democrat, you'd want your Department of Justice investigating these claims of voter fraud, wouldn't we? And why would
I would have wanted them to investigate. I would have wanted them to investigate when Brennan sent the letter to President Obama, basically saying that Hillary developed the Russian collusion in order to cover up her crimes with the computer. I'd like if they had investigated that. I wouldn't have minded if they had investigated the Biden hard drive, which would have revealed about $40-50 million in bribes from China. You know, I would have liked it if they had investigated some of the improprieties involving children on the hard drive. They didn't seem to even do that. So I can't speak for the FBI. I'm baffled, completely baffled. I mean, I have
so let me do this.
I have witnesses, and I say to
Go
them,
ahead.
"You want me to turn it over to the FBI?" And they laugh at me. They laugh at me. I said, "We could turn this over to the FBI." They said, "Well, you know, no, I'm not going to go to the FBI." I don't know what's happening.
So, Mr. Mayor, let's fast forward here. You're now looking for the Supreme Court to get involved, to step in and say, we're going to take a look at this. What do you think this is? Do you think this is going to actually happen, and if so, when?
I do. Here's what I'm doing right now. I appeared yesterday before the Senate, and then I met with the Senate and the House in Arizona, and I asked them to exercise their power under Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which makes the state legislature, they have the plenary power to determine the presidential election. And I'm making a plea to them, and now today, shortly, in Michigan, and tomorrow in Atlanta, that they should take over these investigations, and they should take over this process, because it's been irretrievably corrupted. There's no longer just one or two acts of corruption. There are acts of corruption all over the country. They're all similar. You'd have to be a fool not to realize that this was part of a plan or scheme when it's carried out the same way in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit, in Las Vegas, in Milwaukee. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot not to realize that this is part of a conspiracy and a plan to steal the election. And why the Justice Department doesn't see that, I mean, I was in that department for 17 years, and I guess I am in a state of total amazement at their behavior over the last 4 years.
All right, Mr. Mayor, we're going to leave it there, and appreciate your time. And again, you're a busy man. You'll be making your plea to the Michigan. That's right. We're going to watch that, and we'll bring you back, Mr. Mayor. And good luck with all your endeavors.
Powerful witnesses you haven't heard before, including an insider from the Democratic Party who knows all the corruption in Detroit.
Very good. Okay, we'll keep our eye out for that, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Thank you, sir.
Good.
Now let's go to White House Deputy Communications Director and Deputy Press Secretary Brian Morgenstern. Brian, I'm glad to get you here. You know, a lot's been going on. I'm watching Twitter. I know you got the president has Rudy Giuliani out there fighting for an election win. Meanwhile, the DOJ, Bill Barr, Attorney General, comes out and says he didn't see any election fraud. The back and forth on Twitter, on social media, is intense. The people are ticked off at Bill Barr. I understand there was a meeting with Barr at the White House. Can you shed any light on that?
Sure. Eric, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. I believe the Department of Justice clarified that he was maybe taken a little bit out of context there, and whatever the Attorney General may have been referring to would be any specific criminal investigations that may or may not come across his desk, but not relating to the president's civil litigation and all of the allegations out there. Other than that, you know, that's sort of a campaign issue. We're on the official side, but with respect to the Attorney General's comments, I think he did issue that clarification that he was sort of taken out of context by the media, which then sort of jumped to some conclusions that maybe he was not actually making there.
So our audience understands that means, well, Bill Barr weighed in on the election fraud, whether or not there was election fraud or not. That would seem to be a campaign issue, but he's basically saying, I don't have any cases on my desk. It begs the question, well, where the hell is the FBI? If there's so much indication that there is election fraud, where the heck is the FBI, which would fall under non-campaign but administration?
Sure. And that's fair. I think the president's made his opinion very clear that he wants law enforcement, he wants the FBI to be investigating any credible allegations, which I believe was also a part of the Attorney General's clarification that, of course, the Department of Justice would investigate any and all credible allegations of fraud. Of course, the funny thing, Eric, about ongoing investigations is they generally can't really talk about them. But again, I think he was issuing that clarification to show that he was really sort of taken out of context and it wasn't meant to reflect on the president's team's ongoing litigations.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, we were talking with Dr. Birx. So let's talk a little bit about this emergency approval for the vaccine. President Trump, I believe rightly so, is taking credit for it. He pushed through Operation Warp Speed, which pushed the FDA to give approvals for phase 2, phase 2B, phase 3 trials, which may have taken months, if not years, without the president's push. Kayleigh McEnany famously recently just said it should be called the Trump vaccine. What do you make of the left pushing back on Trump being involved in this vaccine being available fairly soon?
Yeah, Eric, they can't give him credit for anything. It's amazing. And now, just recently, some of the scientists, of course, Dr. Fauci among them, have come out and reiterated that getting kids back in school is very important. That's something the president's been saying for many months. Of course, only now will people acknowledge that he was right. And with Operation Warp Speed and the vaccine, he's been pushing all along, saying we can get this done this year. He's been showing leadership. He's been speeding up the timeline. He's been showing that we can get millions of Americans vaccinated this year, when previously it would take 5 times as long. He's really pushed the regulators to do their work quickly. He's worked with private industry and the scientific community to get these clinical trials, some of the largest trials in history, by the way, done quickly to ensure that not only are these vaccines effective, and they are. We're showing Moderna and Pfizer with over 90% efficacy, 94, 95% efficacy. That's really astounding progress. They are safe. We're not seeing any, we're not seeing major adverse effects as a result in these trials. And that's really terrific, because it gives the American people the confidence that not only will these vaccines help protect them and make them healthy, make them not susceptible to this virus. They're not going to have these serious side effects, at least at this point in what we're learning from these studies. And really speeding up this timeline, what the president's done, Eric, is historic. He has had industrial scale manufacturing going on for the first time, I think, in history at the same time as these trials. He's also sped along the regulatory process and really put pressure in the right places, in the appropriate way, not for political reasons, but to save American lives.
Listen,
his strong leadership has really made a difference.
Brian, I sit on a board of a pharma company involved in trying to find opioid alternatives for obvious reasons, and I know what it takes to get the FDA to approve a phase 1, phase 2, phase 2B, phase 3 trial. You literally could take years and spend millions upon millions of dollars waiting, just even if you have the right drug. But if Operation Warp Speed did anything, it pushed that a little bit faster. It's going to end up saving lives. It just drives me crazy when the left says Trump had nothing to do with this, or Moderna or Pfizer says, well, we're not Operation Warp Speed. But guess what? If we bought $2 billion worth of your vaccine on the backside of you actually finding an effective vaccine, I think Trump had a little bit to do with you going forward and taking the chance on some of the vaccine research. Brian, appreciate your time. Always good to have you on.
Thanks, Eric. Great to be with you.
Iran's top nuclear scientist was recently assassinated, and the incoming Biden administration says it wants the U.S. to re-enter the Iran nuclear deal. But that could cause some major issues, especially with our ally Israel. Here to break it all down is former Deputy National Security Advisor for the Trump administration and author of Revolution, KT McFarland. KT, thanks for joining us again. Big, important week to have you back on. As President-elect Biden is moving into his new foreign policy suit, let's call it, he's already indicated he wants to get back involved in some of the things that President Trump pulled us out of, namely the Paris Climate Accord and also some of the other issues. Now, what happens with Iran given this recent assassination of the Iranian top nuclear advisor? Where do we go from here? What do you think this is starting to look like?
Okay, well, I think Iran has to do something, just for its national pride. But I don't think they're going to do much. Here's why. Because they know that Israel can handle them militarily in any kind of a missile attack or whatever. But they also have their eye on the main prize, which they think that a Biden administration is going to come back in, embrace Iran, give them the goodies, re-sign the nuclear deal, and allow Iran to continue on with its nuclear ambitions, and enriched while it gets its nuclear ambitions. So I don't think they want to risk anything that's going to jeopardize that. Any kind of a major conflagration in the Middle East is not going to do well for the main prize, again, which is Iran plans to have a nice, cozy relationship with the Biden administration like it had with the Obama administration. And the thing about the Iran nuclear deal, it was always a fake. There was never any intention of stopping Iran's nuclear program. It was only going to delay it a couple of years, at which point Iran would be a nuclear weapons state. And it also did nothing to stop Iran's development of missiles, and it even ignored the issue of Iran's support of terrorism throughout the region. So if the Biden administration goes back and signs that, they're really igniting a nuclear arms race in the Middle East and embracing the most terrorist-prone, anti-Israel, anti-Sunni, anti-American country in the region.
You know, Katie, it just blows me away that people think that this regime was somehow going to play nice with America. I mean, there are the mullahs right there who really run the show in Iran. They hate America. They hate everything that Western culture is all about. They've condoned chanting death to America in the streets of Tehran. They want to wipe Israel off the map. There's propaganda film after propaganda film put out by the Iranian people, Iranian military, that show Israel being burned off a map, or America being blown up. Yet somehow what is it with the Democrats that think they're going to somehow talk these people into being friends of ours?
Yeah, it's the ultimate fallacy of the liberal globalists, right? Thinking through charm and persuasion, they can convince mortal enemies of ours to somehow embrace us. And it won't work any more now than it worked in the Obama administration. But the difference now is that other countries in the region, they want peace. Israel wants peace. The Saudis want peace. The Sunni Arabs want peace. They even have a peace agreement. And so to throw Iran into that mix and embolden Iran, what does that do for us? Well, it makes a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. And the second thing that's probably just as upsetting is when Biden talks about, I'm going to end fracking, I'm going to have the Green New Deal, I'm going to have a very different energy policy. Well, what does that do? That embraces and enriches Iran yet again. So I think not only is it going to be deja vu all over again, or back to the future, however you want to say it, but it's going to be much worse because Iran is now emboldened. It's going to walk away from the peace agreements that are already in the Middle East, and it's going to nuclearize. It's already said it's going to. In fact, Eric, about 2 weeks ago, the International Atomic Energy Agency, they came out and said, oh, well, we've discovered, covert operations in Iran. They were cheating on the Iran nuclear deal from the very beginning. And guess who was head of that program? The man who was just assassinated.
And I think there's an important lesson to be learned here, KT. We had, the Obama administration said that they were playing nice with us and they were holding off on their nuclear ambition while we sent them $150 billion in pallets of cash and released all this money that they thought they were owed from the Americans. We did all that, and yet, as you point out, they never scaled anything back. In fact, recently they've said that they've enriched a ton of nuclear material that they could eventually use for a bomb. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, they what they did was they hid it. They pretended. They sort of divided the program up. They hid it in certain places. They said, oh, no, this is not for weapons. It's for peaceful uses. But the Atomic Energy Agency, which is hardly pro-American and definitely not anti-Iranian, I mean, they've come out and said, look, we found, the Iranians aren't answering our questions. They're not allowing inspectors. We've got to assume that they're doing this covertly and that they've been cheating all the way through. So why trust them? And then the other thing that makes me sort of upset is that we now have a lot of leverage on Iran. Iran's economy is in the tank. They're in trouble. Oil prices are low. They really need a treaty with the United States. They need to have economic diversity. They need to have an awful lot of stuff, which we're the only ones who can give them. Why not use that leverage? Why not say, okay, we'll renegotiate with you, but different deal this time. We want inspectors. We want you to stop your missile development program. We don't want you to work with North Korea. Oh, and by the way, your support of terrorism throughout the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, cut it off. That's the leverage we have, and we should use it.
Yeah, good luck with that. Good luck getting the Biden administration to lean on them to do that as well. Very quickly, KT, just about a minute or so. Tell us, General Flynn, you've been close to General Flynn. He's been pardoned. Your thoughts? What do you hear? What do you know? What are you thinking going forward with this?
I think that he should never have been charged with a crime in the first place. He should never have been investigated. All of the information that's come out, and it's not anonymous sources. This is cold, hard papers and facts and notes and emails and text messages. The FBI, the Mueller investigation, the Department of Justice, the intelligence community, they made it all up. They went after General Flynn. They went after me. They went after others, not because they cared about us, but they saw it as a way to get Donald Trump. And so the whole thing was a charade from the beginning. The problem was it destroyed lives, and it really harmed the Trump administration. And it, frankly, has put us at each other's necks. I mean, we're at each other's throats now. The entire country, half the country hates the other half of the country. And I lay that at the feet of a lot of those people who will now probably, in a Biden administration, never be brought to justice.
All right, KT McFarland, always good having you on, my friend. Earlier today, I had a chance to talk with Dr. Deborah Birx, the White House Coronavirus Task Force coordinator. I asked if she would take the coronavirus vaccine. Here was her answer.
I have zero question. I've worked on vaccines and clinical immunology my lifetime. This was a straightforward vaccine for development. It's very similar to what we do with hepatitis B, and people have been vaccinated for years. We know what the critical antigen is. This is presenting an antigen in a unique way, but in the same way it's your body making that immune response to that particular protein. We know, and we know from the data of over 70,000 plus people immunized with this similar platform between Moderna and Pfizer, that it has no significant short-term side effects.
You'll be able to see the entire interview with Dr. Birx on this week's episode of United We Stand. We also will post it to our Facebook page as well. More great news this week when it comes to getting a coronavirus vaccine to the people. Welcome back to emergency medical physician, friend of mine, also personal doctor of mine, Dr. Todd Dorfman. Dr. Todd, the government just needs to decide who will get the vaccine first. I think the CDC came out and recommended all first-line responders get the vaccine first. What are your thoughts on this vaccine, and how effective do you think it'll be?
Yeah, well, it's a great question because I think it's multifaceted. The vaccine in and of itself is incredibly effective. You know, having a vaccine at like 95% roughly is among some of the best vaccines ever. Now, the key, of course, is that you have a great vaccine, you have to get people to vaccinate. So that's, you know, the first step. Generally speaking, even with our best vaccines, only about between like 80 and 90% of the population actually vaccinates. So that's challenge number one, to see how many people can get vaccinated. The other challenge is exactly what you alluded to, the allocation. And I think it makes a lot of sense to give it to first-line healthcare workers. But I think, you know, that has to be further determined. In other words, someone who's in an office mostly doing Zoom health or any other sort of telehealth situation is really not a first-line worker compared to like a staff in an emergency department, a staff in an intensive care unit. They have to be first. The CDC went over decreasing fatality rates because the highest, you know, fatality rate is in this age group and multiple medical problems in nursing homes and long-term care facilities. And then they went with who's going to treat all these people. And I think that's a very reasonable first approach, frankly.
So, Todd, you're a frontline worker. You've spent time in emergency rooms. I've seen you in action there. I mean, you're rubbing up against a lot of people who may be infected. Any reluctance for you to get that shot in your arm as one of the first rounds of people getting it?
No, honestly, I have fairly good confidence in how this is being vetted. I think that, you know, the headlines and the scientific kind of press is one thing, and there are, you know, thousands of documents underneath the surface that are being investigated by the FDA. I also think it's really a sort of an important piece that the UK has just approved the Pfizer vaccine, because they're really an analogous institution to the FDA in terms of their thoroughness of approval. So I would get the vaccine as offered to me. Now, Eric, having said that, it's a brand new type of vaccine. It's an mRNA vaccine, and that's really not been out in the public before. So there's a little bit of risk there, certainly, once it's distributed to the public.
And I think what people need to understand is that there is, we think of all the drugs that have been approved, FDA approval for years, and then later to be found to be somewhat dangerous, only to be pulled off shelves. And we're hoping this isn't one of them. Final thoughts on the vaccine, Doc?
Yeah, I think the vaccine's a fabulous thing. I think that's the Pfizer, the Moderna one will come out next. I think the real issue is distribution in numbers and how fast we can produce it and how willing people will be to accept the vaccine, because that's really what's going to create a defense for the United States.
All right, herd immunity on the way. Dr. Todd Dorfman, always good to have you on.
Thanks very much, Eric. Pleasure to be here again.
Straight ahead, our all-star panel discusses all the hot topics. It's always lively conversation.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need at a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
It has to stop. This is elections. This is the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this.
Welcome back to our panel. Sinclair political commentator Amisha Cross, host of the Armstrong-Williams Show. Armstrong-Williams, member of the President's National Security Education Board, host of America First on Salem Radio, and Sinclair media contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, University of Maryland lecturer, Dr. Jason Nichols. I'll start with you, Amisha. Let me guess, you're agreeing with that gentleman from Georgia, is that right?
No, absolutely. I agree with him in the same way that I agreed with the current Georgia Secretary of State, Raffensperger, a couple of weeks ago. What we know is that there is no election fraud. We know that, and we've heard it several times. And even just as of late yesterday, we heard it from the Department of Justice and Bill Barr, who has been in the tank of President Trump the entire time he's been appointed in this position. So I think that what this goes to show is that the president's last-ditch efforts to pressure state elected officials into bending to his will and changing election results is just more of Donald Trump cannibalizing the Republican Party. Because what ends up happening is he's been trying to dissuade and decrease the amount of confidence in our election process, which is dangerous in and of itself. But this is a race that he lost weeks ago, and he refuses to accept that. And any Republican worth his salt, any elected official worth their salt, is not willing to go out on a limb and change illegally the votes of people who have vested interest in this election process and spent their time making sure that they voted for who they wanted. It's over for President Trump, and he just needs to accept it.
What about it, Sebastian? What about making sure that all the votes, the legal votes, are legal, in fact, and counted?
I'm just horrified. Amisha is trying to gaslight your audience, Eric. There's no evidence of election fraud. Did you not listen to Dr. Linda Lee in front of the Michigan State Senate yesterday, where she gave chapter and verse the numerous cases of dead people voting, of individuals being blocked from being allowed to actually count the votes because they were GOP poll watchers. We have officials in these states saying that we have 9,000 people in Arizona voting in that election who don't live there anymore. You haven't read any, either you haven't read any of the files that have been, any of the cases that have been filed by the president's team, or you're just being disingenuous. We have rampant evidence of election fraud. And even if it's just one case, that means somebody has been disenfranchised. Somebody's sacred right to have their voice heard has been stolen from them. And your rank dismissal of this is so utterly disturbing.
And talk to us, Armstrong. There are clear violations. And the left will say, one side will say yes, but not enough to change the election. And the right will say yes, but it is. If it's bad, if it's been tainted, then maybe it should be redone. What are your thoughts on this? And maybe weigh in, Armstrong, on Bill Barr saying that there's not enough to change the election.
You know, you asked a very specific question about Georgia. And when you have a glitch, which they claim a vendor updated the equipment that caused this glitch, which created a nightmare in 2 precincts in Georgia. And then you check the machine and you realize there was no update to the machine. Either somebody is lying or somebody is hiding something. And I think the only thing that Attorney General Barr is saying, I think the Washington Post and the New York Times clearly took his headline and made it into whatever they wanted. He said there has been nothing in terms of the investigation to date that shows that there's a reason to find anything that would overturn the results of the elections at this point, but they continue the investigation. That's why he had his office issue a statement earlier today clarifying this. And even if you look in Wisconsin, and if you look in Pennsylvania, clearly in these states, Dominion, there was a problem. There was a problem with the ballot box. There was a problem with the ballots that have come in. And I agree with Sebastian to this point. If one voter was disenfranchised, it's a problem. And I don't think many people are outraged over the fact of whether Trump is going to continue the next 4 years. If there is voter fraud, especially in one of the freest democracies in the world, I mean, this is a problem. And when you have situations in precincts where you mail out 1.5 million ballots and 2 million come back, almost a 500,000 difference. I mean, if the shoe is on the other foot, everybody should be outraged, not because it's Republican or Democrat, but there is something very fraudulent and you could almost say corrupt that happened with the election system that needs to change.
And Jason, Armstrong makes a very good point. We remember right after Hillary Clinton lost how much complaining was going on about what quote unquote voter fraud that there was then. Now all of a sudden it's I don't know, some sort of you're a jerk for pointing out that there's voter fraud, Jason.
Well, it's funny. There was conspicuous silence in 2018 when, at least from the Republicans, when people were saying Georgia has issues, let's fix some of these issues, talking about the mass disenfranchisement, particularly of people of color in the South. But now all of a sudden there seems to be this big problem. And the truth is that more people were enfranchised this time. We had more people voting. There was not, I mean, of course, whenever you have an election with 150 million people across the nation, there are going to be issues, but certainly not enough to overturn this election. Bill Barr stated it. It's been stated by people who love Donald Trump, like Raffensperger, up until this point, and they are frustrated. And to be honest, they're only helping people like Reverend Warnock, and they're helping Ossoff out there in Georgia. But with all this infighting, when they know that they're undermining the bedrock of our democracy, which is our elections, we need to have confidence that our elections are going well. They did go well. The right person, the person who won the most votes in all of those states, won the election in the end.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, panel. Thank you. Always great to weigh in. Cryptocurrency continues to soar. Next, I'm talking with a guy who went from Disney child star to Bitcoin guru. Don't miss my interview with Brock Pierce next. And Black Friday came and went, then Cyber Monday broke records for spending this year. But for many, a little-known day came next, Giving Tuesday. The hashtag doesn't trend, and the media doesn't pay much attention, but Giving Tuesday is an important day. It's a day we give back. 2020 has been a rough year, no doubt, but I'd like you to consider giving back a little. The Eric Chase Foundation was set up to assist families struggling with opioids and families like mine who have lost a child, a brother, or a sister to deadly opioids. We're fighting for our children's lives, and your help is vital. Go to ericchasefoundation.org. If you can help us out, you'll be doing something very special, saving lives of our most precious commodity, our kids.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America. United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand, America. United we stand. We stand, America strong. City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time. We stand America. United we stand. We stand America. United we stand.
Let's get right to the interview segment. I'm joined by former actor and current cryptocurrency expert, Brock Pierce. He also ran for president. We'll get to that in a second. But Brock, you know, how does a child actor, Mighty Ducks, get involved in such a wild ride, the cryptocurrency world?
Well, having been a byproduct of the first generation of kids to grow up with computers and internet connections, I recognized at a young age that technology, specifically the internet, was going to change the world. And so at the height of my acting career at 16 years old, I decided to quit and become a technology entrepreneur. And so I've been building businesses for more than half my life.
You know, and Forbes, at one point, Forbes estimated your net worth somewhere between 700 million and $1.1 billion. And I guess that is because of cryptocurrencies. I'm going to tell the audience right here, I'm involved. A couple of years ago in 2018, I was watching Bitcoin go up, and it was all the rage. Bitcoin was trading around 12,000 a Bitcoin. Around 15,000, I jumped in and went all the way up to 19,000. Then I watched it go back down to 4,000 this year, Brock. Again, just recently this week, it made a brand new all-time high, 20,000. It's not for the weak of stomach investors, is it?
Well, I mean, yeah, this is a market that moves, and it moves fast. It's like a roller coaster ride. If you can't stomach the high peaks and the low valleys, it might not be a market for you. Or it's one where you participate and you set it and forget it and check in 5 years. Just make sure not to lose your keys.
You know, Brock, when Bitcoin first started, and I didn't get involved right away because it was linked to a lot of things, a lot of seedy activities, prostitution, drug rings, and things like that. Those are the only people who are willing to take and trade Bitcoin. Now it's become mainstream, right? I mean, I just recently heard PayPal is using Bitcoin, is allowing Bitcoin to be, you know, you can trade Bitcoin via PayPal. What is it going to take to get Bitcoin through that 20,000 mark to real legitimacy?
Well, I think we're there at an institutional level, as you've noted. PayPal and many of the largest financial institutions are in, at least piloting. Governments around the world are doing the same. But for real mainstream adoption to occur, it needs to be consumer friendly. We have to have user interfaces and security protocols that make it so that your grandmother can safely and comfortably use it. But I think we're well on our way. I feel like we're in that 1996, 1997, 1998 moment for crypto. And the next decade is around the corner and the world is changing faster than ever.
It's so fascinating because I come from the real business world. I come from the Wall Street world, and everything's tied to the dollar or gold or whatever. It's tied to something. Can you explain, and I don't know this, can you explain to me, well, first of all, we don't know who invented Bitcoin, and we don't know if it's actually tied to anything. This is the most fascinating part of the Bitcoin experiment. Can you tell the audience how Bitcoin is created?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is created by those people that are essentially running the servers to power the network. There is no Bitcoin company, there is no Bitcoin organization, and there's no one that owns or controls or runs the Bitcoin network. It is an open source system that anyone can participate in. And if you choose to add compute or call it a server to the network, you then have an opportunity to earn Bitcoins. The network pays out a fixed amount of Bitcoin every roughly 10 minutes for those people that are providing the necessary infrastructure to run that system. And your question about where does the value come from? What is Bitcoin backed by? Value is derived by consensus. Nothing really has value. Value is created when two or more parties agree or form consensus that there is value, and the more parties that agree, the more liquid that market becomes. And a time where 26% of all US dollars existed were created this year. A lot of people, because of that frightening statistic, are looking for alternative stores of value, and Bitcoin looks a lot like digital gold.
You know what, Brock, we're going to bring you back because I want to talk about this so much more. I really love the Bitcoin story. And again, there are people right now, Bitcoin's trading around $19,000 per Bitcoin. There are people who expect that this thing could go as high as $200,000-$300,000 per Bitcoin. I just have to tell you too, I got started in this. So many young people want to be involved in this. They want to be part of this. And that really is what creates value. When you have a group of people who want to be part of something, that in itself is value. Brock Pierce, we appreciate your time. We'll bring you back. Thank you. Every week we honor first responders whose lives have been cut short. Last Friday, D.C. homicide detective Timothy Francis was shot and killed in a murder-suicide. Investigators say his wife killed him. D.C. police say Detective Francis was with the department for 20 years. Senior Deputy Robert Drew Small with the Travis County, Texas Sheriff's Office was killed in a motorcycle wreck last Friday. Deputy Small was about to celebrate his 25-year anniversary with the Sheriff's Office this month. Rest in peace, officers.
America. One nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need at a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
the poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week.
This newest coronavirus surge requires additional American resolve. Wear a mask, save lives, social distance, fight transmission, wash your hands, avoid the disease. Together, let's make the sacrifice to stop the spread of COVID-19.
Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand American strong.
United we stand.
We stand American strong.
United we stand.
Let's talk balls and strikes. We're joined by Political's White House reporter, Dan Lippman. Dan, great to get you back. So everyone wants to know what's going on in D.C. with Republicans. So the swamp is divided right now. You have the Trump Republicans and you have the establishment Republicans. They're not sure which to go, what they should be supporting these legal challenges by Trump, or the other side of the coin is the others are saying, let's just move on. What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think most Republicans in Washington, they recognize that Joe Biden is the president-elect, and that they think that this, fighting this rearguard action hurts Trump's legacy because it makes him look like a sore loser. And so they'd rather have Trump focus on the last month and a half or so of his presidency and not get bogged down by these fruitless legal challenges.
You know, you say most, and I'm going to just push back because this is balls and strikes here, just news, no opinion here. But I see a lot of people, the MAGA crew, and here's proof. Fox is bleeding some of the MAGA viewers, and we know this because One America News and Newsmax have had 1 million people viewing some of their programs. That's never happened before. So those are people who are pro-Trump, and they're all for fighting this out in the courts. But you say there's some elected lawmakers who aren't so interested in doing this?
Yeah, I think many of the elected lawmakers, of course, they're still afraid of Trump a little bit, but they want to move on. And they don't think that this will help too much in the Georgia runoffs. Although, of course, they need Trump's help to get his MAGA supporters in Georgia out to the polls on January 5th. But they say that we should look at, we should start holding the Biden administration, the incoming Biden administration, more accountable. We have to make sure that their nominees aren't too far to the left, that they don't get to slide in policies without strong challenges when need be. And so they just know that the percentage chance of these challenges winning is low. And so the Electoral College is voting in 12 days, and then that will get certified in January. And so unless you're Matt Gaetz, right, many Republicans just want to give up.
Dan, you bring up something important, holding the Biden camp accountable. I did a monologue on that exact topic, and the media has been really tough on Trump over the 4 years, and I get it, and that's your job. Your job is to go ask the tough questions, holding truth to power. But for me, in the last 4 weeks since President-elect Biden is President-elect Biden, he hasn't had one tough question asked yet. Dan, where is the media?
No, that's a great point. And so he isn't holding many press conferences, if at all. He's not really taking questions from those pool reporters in large numbers. He's only doing a couple interviews, one to the New York Times, one to NBC News. And so that's a big frustration for people who cover the White House and who cover Biden. And they are doling out these stories about their nominees to the New York Times or the Washington Post so that they can get the best coverage. And so this is a pretty leak-prone leak-free administration that's incoming. But obviously, I want as many tough questions asked of any president, including Biden.
Yeah, I think, Dan, I'm going to leave it there, but I agree with you, and Politico always has been. I come from the media world. I come from New York and D.C., where it does lean heavily left. I got to tell you, Politico does a great job keeping it as down the middle as humanly possible in a very, very left-leaning media landscape. Dan Lippman, Politico, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
Remember to set your DVR so you never miss an episode of America This Week. We have a complete list of times and cities on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/America Bowling. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all of our shows there.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand America.
United we stand.
We stand America.
United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand America.
United we stand.
We stand America strong.
City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand America.
United we stand.
We stand America
United we stand.
You can watch America This Week wherever you are and wherever you go. Just download the Stir app to your smartphone, Roku, Apple TV, and other devices, and start getting 100% free TV. America This Week airs every Sunday at 9 a.m. and again at midnight on your local Stir City channel. That's Channel 1. That puts every show at your fingertips. Again, 100% free. That's a wrap for America This Week. The holiday season is officially underway. Small businesses took a beating this year. So if you can, support your local shops and stores. Remember, gift cards are a great way to shop local and spread the love to your family and friends. This week, First Lady Melania Trump outdid herself again, unveiling the White House Christmas decorations. This year's theme is America the Beautiful, and we couldn't agree more. It's a stunning display. Have a great night, everybody.